Welcome back to another edition of Force Friday, where we talk about Star Wars theories, characters, concepts, comparisons, analyzations, collectibles, and more. And today we're going to be talking about the Mandalorian Season 2 trailer. We'll kind of go through the trailer, give a breakdown and kind of overall thoughts, and then I'll give my opinions on it. Most of you, I think, know that I kind of think the Mandalorian is fine. It's far from my favorite kind of Star Wars. I kind of feel like it rests in this area of mediocrity and kind of averageness, but that doesn't mean that I don't like it, because I do, and it doesn't mean that I don't look forward to this season, because I do. Some of the reasons why I look forward to it will be covered in this very video, but we'll get to it. So the trailer opens with a shot of the Razor Crest, the Mandalorian ship floating through space in a clearly damaged state. The engines are flickering and smoking, the back access ramp is down, exposing the interior. I imagine the license plates to be expired, and the windshield wipers to be in very rough shape. But it looks like it's been through a pretty rough go of it. As for the planet it's floating towards, it could be Navarro, the planet Mando was based out of at the beginning of Season 1, and home to Greef Karga and Cara Dune. But more on these two later. We next see the Mando walking through the darkness with a cityscape behind him. The child, or Baby Yoda, is back in his floating cradle. We see walls covered in graffiti, and this is pretty unique to Star Wars. Like, we haven't really seen that before. I feel like we often imagine graffiti in the Star Wars universe, but I don't know if we've ever seen it before. I could be wrong about that as well, and then somebody will point out, well, no, it's in level 3 of this video game, and I'll be like, yeah, but if it's not in the movies, does it count? But anyway, interesting to see nonetheless. It's little things like that that stick out to me with Star Wars, and you see something that's like never been in the universe kind of proper before. I remember thinking the same thing seeing books in Episode 8. Like, never seen a book before in Star Wars. Back to it. As for which planet it is, with the darkness, it's really impossible to tell. This trailer is dark overall, and I don't mean tonally, I mean literally hard to see. And maybe I'm just getting old, which is also possible, and all the young kids are like, oh, it's perfect, this thing. You don't like it? But I'm like squinting and trying to turn the light up on my phone to watch it. But there seems to be an industrial vibe there, and it seems to be in dire straits. Could be Solo's home planet of Corellia, which we saw in the Solo film, which was a shipbuilding industrial world ran largely by criminal gangs and rampant with poverty, and certainly had a strong presence in the old EU, which the Mandalorian does seem to respect, which I dig. The next shot is important for many reasons. We see Tusken Raiders atop a bantha. Funny story about this, and I'm going to say this very quietly. My wife and I started dating when we were in high school, right? 15 years old. Her mom used to drop her off at my house. That's a fact. Anyway, one time I asked her, kind of half jokingly, what animal do you think they got to play this creature, the bantha? And do you know what her answer was? A woolly mammoth. It's probably the dumbest thing she's ever said in her life. She eventually grew up to be a doctor, but pretty crazy, right? Back to the bantha. You see the Razor Crest flying overhead. This confirms several long-standing rumors stating this season will return to Tatooine, and some of its most important moments will go down there. Shocker. I wish, dude, if I never see Tatooine again, it'll be too soon. I'm done with it. Like, that's one of my issues with Star Wars right now, since the Disney era, is how much they hover around the original trilogy. Leave the original trilogy alone, and leave Brittany alone, and leave Michael alone. Anyway, the next planet we see, however, does have my interest. It's about as icy as P. Diddy's neck. We can see the Razor Crest crashed in the background as the Mandalorian kneels beside Baby Yoda. You also get a clear look at Mando's new right thigh plate, replacing one of the last pieces of his original brown armor as seen in the first episode of Season 1. Now, all of this is set to the conversation we heard in the final episode of Season 1 between Mandalorian and the armorer, where she tells him the child is as his son and he must unite him with his own people, as she puts it, an order of sorcerers called Jedi. This has led to speculation that the icy planet we see is Ilium. For those of you not in the know, that was a remote world strong in the Force and rich in the Force-sensitive crystal known as Kyber. Kyber was used to power the Jedi's lightsabers, and for millennia, the planet was guarded by the Jedi Order. That is, until the rise of the Empire, when entire continents of the world were ripped apart and harvested for use in the Death Star's super laser. Imagine it as the West Virginia of the Star Wars universe. They just take what they want from it and leave it in dire straits. Ilium eventually becomes Starkiller Base, as seen in The Force Awakens, but with this series set decades before, it may not even be under Imperial control any longer. If the Mandalorian is looking for Jedi, their long-held sacred planet would be a logical place to start. The next shots are some of the most interesting. Mandalorians walking through a busy dock or port. It looks like very Pirates of the Caribbean to me. or Caribbean. I can never get that quite right. It's rainy, it's wet, there's nets and cargo everywhere, and an absolute abundance of Quarren. Quarren, or squid heads as they're often called, first appeared in Return of the Jedi and had a major starring role in the Mon Cala arc of the Clone Wars. The Quarren are one of the dominant species of the water world of Mon Cala, the other being the Mon Calamari, like Admiral Akbar. The two species have long warred against one another, and the ocean's setting combined with the sheer amount of Quarren makes this pretty likely to be Mon Cala. We later see our dynamic duo standing on a boat with the Quarren, though for what purpose remains unknown. Now we come to the single most talked about shot of the trailer. A mysterious cloaked and hooded woman watching the Mandalorian and the child before disappearing. The voiceover and overall mysteriousness. What's your secret power? He's terribly mysterious. That's it? Mysterious? Well, terribly mysterious. What you know about that? Anyway, this woman watching from the shadows and then disappearing. The voiceover and overall mysteriousness seems to be implying that this person is a Jedi. Whether that's true or just a misdirect, we'll have to see. This is actually WEE star Sasha Banks, who has long been rumored to be a part of the second season, with it finally being confirmed here. There has been some speculation she could be playing Sabine Wren, the Mandalorian from Star Wars Rebels, who shares a close bond with another major character who we're gonna see this season, Ahsoka Tano. I'm leaning on the side that it could be Sabine, and that it might be and probably will be Sabine, at least my heart wants it to be, only because she could be the link to Ahsoka and to the Mandalorian. She could be the bridge that connects the two, and her being a Mandalorian could result in a ton of discussion and sort of exposition regarding the Mandalorian as a race, the Mandalorian as a creed, the cultural aspects, which I would find very alluring. Anyway, back to Ahsoka. At this point, it's basically a certainty that Rosario Dawson will be playing this fan favorite character. This isn't an underground rumor. All the major trades have covered and verified this. You'd think a shot of her in this teaser trailer would be a no-brainer, considering the massive success of the final season of Clone Wars, but nothing is seen or even hinted at here, besides from the general suggestion of Jedi this season. As for the role Ahsoka will play, it's honestly hard to say. Sabine is also rumored to appear this season, though it's supposedly a fairly small role akin to a cameo, which leads me to believe that this may very well be her, this hooded character. We next see the Razor Crest being flanked by X-Wings, straight out of the original trilogy. As for why they're chasing him, who knows? It's possible that the bounty on the child has reached the ears of the Republic or even Luke Skywalker's Jedi, and they want to rescue him from what they see as a simple bounty hunter. Or maybe it's all the shooting and killing Mando does on an episode-by-episode basis. Or perhaps it's just an excuse to shove more original trilogy stuff into The Mandalorian. Hard to say. But the biggest and by far best reveal of this trailer is right here. Clearly slung on the back of the speeder is Boba Fett's jetpack, straight out of Return of the Jedi. This all but confirms long-running rumors that Boba Fett will be appearing this season, played by Mr. Morrison. This is a similar situation to the Ahsoka one. The story has been covered and confirmed by all major trades, but the major confirming piece came when several days ago, Mr. Morrison's official CV, as provided directly by his agent, listed him as Boba Fett in Mandalorian Season 2. This was removed pretty quickly, but not before a bazillion screenshots could be taken and posted in everyone's stories. This basically makes his appearance as Boba indisputable. This isn't something that can be edited by anybody but his agent, the Robert Bruce Agency. Let's get back to those rumors. Let's say that when we first see Boba's armor, it will be at least partially worn by Deadwood's Timothy Olyphant. I don't know if that's his name, but it's how I read it. Shout out to Lord of the Rings. As Tatooine's own former slave turned brutal lawmaker Cobb Vanth from the Aftermath novel. Vanth is a pretty cool character. After Tatooine descended into lawlessness following the death of Jabba the Hutt, Vanth made a pact with the Tusken Raiders and brutally enforced order on the criminal gangs of Tatooine. He wears a damaged and only partially complete set of Mandalorian Beskar armor, hinted to be Boba Fett's but not confirmed. This means that the caped figure seen approaching Fennec Shand at the end of Episode 5 is either Vanth or Boba himself. And if Boba's back on the scene, I wouldn't bet on things ending up too well for the guy parading around in his armor. However, let me be clear. I hope it's not Boba Fett. I hope it's just this dude who's got his armor. I really, really do. I don't need Boba Fett. I'd much rather Morrison play Rex, or even shout out to my buddy Matt. He offered the idea of possibly even Cody. Something like that would be far more interesting to me than Boba Fett popping up. The only allure I can possibly see in having Boba Fett there is just to discuss the idea of Boba Fett not being a Mandalorian and disgracing the armor and having that conversation in the show. Outside of that, I want absolutely nothing to do with him, and it will do nothing for me in regards to how I feel about this show if he's in it. Anyway, back on track. Our final few shots are less speculative but still interesting. We see scout troopers on speeder bikes, which is one of my favorite shots in it, just that that off of the cliff and down to the ground stuff is like cool. It's like something that you've never really thought about, but it's cool to see. Don't need it. I get plenty of speeder bikes in Return of the Jedi and I'm good, but it was cool to see. We see the Mandalorian beneath the same boat deck we saw earlier as water fills up around him, and I doubt that his gear is waterproof, particularly his helmet. And we get to see him taking off with his jetpack into the same rocky canyon as the scout troopers, so possibly a chase scene there. Action, action, action! And the trailer's final scene has Mando and the child in some sort of underground dingy fighting ring with two Gamorreans battling it out with vibro axes. In their underwear, all sideshow mythos style. The one-eyed alien we see is the same species that appeared at the Mos Eisley Cantina, and he tries to get the upper hand on the Mandalorian, which we know rarely fares well unless you're a clan of Jawas. Lastly, a little bit of info. It's supposed to be 8 episodes, the same as season 1, with a greater focus on side characters. It's supposed to also be more connected than season 1, which I'm happy to hear. Bo-Katan is rumored to appear, which is interesting considering she was the de facto ruler of the Mandalorians when we last saw her. That would be an interesting conversation to kind of see take place. I'm sure Moff Gideon will return with some darksaber action, and I'm sure there'll be more mayhem and shooting and mucking about. So it brings me to what I need. I need to care. And let me explain what I mean. The Mandalorian, if you watch my review, it doesn't make me really care about the characters. I've already criticized season 1 for the things I think that they missed, so I'm not going to take the time to do that here. But what I want to happen here is to fix the problems that I had with season 1. I need to know more about who the Mandalorian is, what makes him tick, why I should care about him. Shout out to Chan, a friend of mine. She said one thing that she found cool about the Mandalorian was that it was basically a child who was robbed of his family to be saved by a cult, basically, only to have to betray the cult to save a child. And when she said that, it really clicked for me in a big way. So I hope they explore that a little bit more thematically. Outside of that, I'm sure more figures, statues, posters, and hot toys are on their way. Hope you guys are staying safe. Hope you guys are staying sane. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. Until next time, take care.